As of the time of this video, 36 seasons of the hit show The Amazing Race have aired, with season 37 coming very soon. So here we go with spoiler-free rankings of every season for those who want to get into the show for the first time. This list is a great starting spot for those new to this amazing show, and I will let you know which seasons have returnees, but I will not spoil why they are on each season, with one exception. For this video, I had you all fill out a survey I posted on Patreon and on YouTube where you simply voted whether you liked a season or didn't like a season. If you liked it, then the season was given a point. If you didn't like it, a point was taken away. And at the end of the survey, I asked what your favorite and least favorite seasons were. Picking a season as your favorite gave it 2 extra bonus points, and saying a season is your least favorite takes 2 points away, thanks to the thousands of people who filled out this year's surveys for these videos. So with that, it is time. 36 seasons of The Amazing Race ranked, starting with the tier of seasons I am calling the bottom of the barrel. Number 36, The Amazing Race 8 Family Edition. Ha ha ha. I laugh, but this could have worked. The Amazing Race thrives on 2 adults with a pre-existing relationship racing around the world. This creates natural drama, intrigue, and of course, wanderlust, as you see places you wish you could visit and sometimes places you want to avoid. The Amazing Race 8, aka the Family Edition, ruins this entire premise. Instead of teams of 2 adults, it's teams of 4. Which seems cool until you realize some teams have children, others just have 4 adults. Well, that's not fair, and this isn't really a race around the world, it's a race around North America. Okay, all right, maybe that's cool to those who don't live here, but for the rest of us who already do, talk about a snooze fest. Some get enjoyment out of the season, but that's because they love to be different. On the plus side, this is the first time the race visits Panama and Costa Rica. The Amazing Race 8 scores a whopping negative 48.7, wow. Number 35, The Amazing Race 32. On its face, nothing seems inherently wrong about The Amazing Race 32. There are 11 teams of newbies. It is the first season to visit Trinidad and Tobago. They even reintroduced some twists that we have not seen in a while, like the no rest leg, where teams do 2 legs without being able to stop at a pit stop in between them. So what's wrong with this one? The show itself does nothing wrong, but the teams, the characters, the players decide to break the race by abusing the rule set put into place, and makes it so utterly predictable that the race had to make rule changes moving forward to ensure the nonsense never happens again. You'll notice too, when teams start to try to do what happened in this season and later seasons, all of a sudden magically after an episode, they're like, oh, we decided not to do that anymore. Yeah, why do you think that is? If this list was my personal ranking, it would come in dead last, and the more time that passes, the more the fans recognize this absolute dumpster fire. The Amazing Race 32 scores a negative 21.8. Number 34, The Amazing Race 6. Coming hot off the heels of The Amazing Race 5, a widely beloved season as you will later see, where did 6 go wrong? The show still had a big budget. They went to a bunch of countries for the first time, like Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Sri Lanka, for example, but the cast just straight up sucks. When The Amazing Race gets the cast right, even boring locations can't hold it back, but when they get the cast wrong, even exciting locations can't save it, and wow, the cast of 6 just blows chunks. It gets uncomfortable at times, many times, too often, too many times. Like the other seasons below this one, season 6 is an easy skip. The Amazing Race 6 scores an 8.0. Number 33, The Amazing Race 36 COVID Edition 3.0. What is hopefully the final COVID edition of the show, the end of a trilogy, The Amazing Race 36 is basically a race around South America featuring some players who speak fluent Spanish. Does that seem like an unfair advantage given the route this season? You betcha. Not to spoil anything, but the cast and boo order this season are a mid at best, and I think given some time, this season will slide up the rankings, but it being the most recent one still has its bad outweighing the good in a lot of fans' minds. I thought it was okay, but you're never gonna see me go, oh, this season's amazing either. Like a season later on this list, it does have longer episodes than ever before, but this time they felt drawn out as this season was filmed and produced with shorter episodes in mind, and it shows. The Amazing Race 36, aka COVID Edition 3.0, scores an 11.4. And quickly, I want to thank the patrons for supporting this channel and making it possible to do huge videos like this one. If you want to join them in supporting Once Upon an Island and pick what videos I make, along with watching everything I make weeks and even months early, then check out the link in the description. Thank you for your support. And now we move on to our next section of the list called It's Okay, I Guess. Number 32, The Amazing Race 4. This is the last season during what many consider the classic era of the show, aka the era where the locations and simply traveling were far more important than any challenges or twists thrown their way. It was also the season widely known for almost getting the show canceled. Why is that? Well, the cast sucked. Whoa, deja vu, I know you've heard that one before. The route was also largely uninspired, feeling more like a Euro trip than a race around the world, and while it does have some redeeming factors, it can be straight up boring due to said cast. I think it's okay to watch, but just don't get your hopes up. The Amazing Race 4 scores a 33.3. Number 31, The Amazing Race 26 Blind Date Edition. This is a travesty being placed this low, and I know I said this last year, but I mean it. It's a travesty. A season where half of the teams are happily in love mixed in with the other half of teams who are meeting each other for the first time, and the Amazing Race wants them to fall in love. But the Amazing Race has zero idea how to pick a good blind date for each player. For example, because two people are blonde and they're both doctors, they're yep, you're meant to fall in love. What? It is atrocious matchmaking, but I love it. This is a top 10 season for myself. I think everyone else sees a bunch of bad gameplay from said blind date teams, but there are so many memorable moments burned into my brain that this is the Survivor Gabon of this show's history in my mind, aka it's the hot mess season. Do you want a good clean race where everyone is best friends? Go somewhere else. Do you want a season full of people who at first like each other and then they don't by the end? It's a funny contrast to all the pre-existing teams who almost get married after the race is done. The fans ranked this number 31, but I would say watch it and set your expectations for a fun mess. The Amazing Race 26 scores a 38.3. Number 30, The Amazing Race 33 COVID Edition 1.0. Now here's a season that I really can't fault for its issues. The Amazing Race 33 filmed its first 3 legs before COVID-19 hit and then couldn't resume until 19 months later. That's a year and a half. I actually like the first 3 legs and my favorite team makes it really far. Heck, they were even experimenting with new camera angles and editing choices in the beginning that it made it feel fresh. However, the return after COVID in leg 4 is so dull. It's cool how they handled it, but since the show needed to stay safe, they basically avoided any non-European countries, and it can be fairly predictable who will be making it far. Though I will say, the team of Arun and Natalia bring the chaos, and I love them for that. The Amazing Race 33, aka COVID Edition 1.0, scores a 58.3. Number 29, The Amazing Race 30. I remember this season airing in a rush, it went by so fast. They put all 12 legs in 8 episodes, and while this was fun to watch, it did make a lot of things just fly right by for me. They do include a cool twist for one leg that I won't spoil, but otherwise the big twists are these head-to-head battles. Something you might expect on a competition show like The Challenge feels wildly out of place here on The Amazing Race, and it slows down the pacing of an otherwise fast-paced show. The Amazing Race 30 scores a 60.8. Number 28, The Amazing Race 16. How does a season that takes place during what is widely considered the golden era of the show fall down this low? You know what it is. Casting. Frankly, season 16 rides or dies on whether you like one team, the Cowboys. Everyone else, not really that memorable. And the route is a bunch of places we've been to before. I personally love the Cowboys, but a season of the show should never live or die based on whether you like one team or not. But here it does. Yeehaw! It's an okay season, and The Amazing Race 16 scores a 61.2. Number 27, The Amazing Race 27. This is a funny one. It's the first one to go to Zimbabwe, so not much new in terms of locations, but seeing one team after another make bad strategic moves is interesting on its own, in my opinion. Unless it's the team you're rooting for, but no worries, pretty much everyone screws up the season, and that by itself can be a fun time. On the flip side, there's no self-driving this season. I'm not a fan of that. Anyone who has watched the show can tell you that you need self-driving. It's part of the chaos. In case you're new, no self-driving makes this so much easier for a lot of teams. Self-driving separates the contenders from the pretenders. There's so many mistakes we miss out on and puts the fate of a team entirely on their own shoulders. Without it, there's too much variability with the teams depending on other people, and yeah, it's hard to get a good gauge on who's the better teams when they really don't have to do as much work as they normally do. However, the finish to the season is a good one, and sometimes that can make up for many errors for many people. The Amazing Race 27 scores 63.5. Number 26, The Amazing Race 24 All-Stars 2. Oh boy, the first returning season on this list has drawn nothing but hate from most fans since it happened, and it's why the show stopped bringing back people for another 7 seasons. The route offers nothing new besides whales. The cast is full of Ys instead of teams who have openly stated they want to play again and that we wanted, but instead were cast aside for other teams who had already seen multiple chances to play, or we just didn't want to see them again. And of course, there is one team that has no pre-existing relationship because they were just thrown together at the last second instead of being replaced, and yeah, it sounds like that would be interesting, but it's not. It's a dull season that does not live up to the high expectations it set being called All-Stars, and I don't recommend it unless you're simply watching through the show in chronological order. The Amazing Race 24 scores a 63.7. Now for the part of the list I call any day of the week. Number 25, The Amazing Race 34 COVID Edition 2.0. Remember The Amazing Race 33 aka COVID Edition 1.0 and even 36 COVID Edition 3.0? Well, it's back again, though this time it is the best of the trilogy, as the entire race is built around knowing this rather than having them to slapdash a season at the last minute to try and adjust to a worldwide pandemic, and they don't have to stretch out episodes to amounts of time that it never meant to be. This time the end result is not nearly as predictable and has a few tricks up its sleeve. One is that they visit the country of Jordan for the first time, and two is no non-elimination legs. This kind of sucked in real time with how the episodes were separated, but on a binge it's much better, and that's how you're gonna watch it now anyways. Don't expect greatness, as the race is still very much restricted, but it is a marked improvement over 33. The Amazing Race 34 aka COVID Edition 2.0 scores a 65.2. Number 24, The Amazing Race 28 Internet Celebrity Edition. What happens when you decide to say screw our philosophy of casting everyday Americans? Instead, cast a bunch of people who aren't really fans of the show and are only on it because they're minor internet celebrities and this might give them more fame. You get season 28. Also, for what I assume are cost reasons, everyone starts the race from their homes, but not really because they all start together in Mexico. This is such a whatever season with an uninspired cast that I don't care to talk about it. Outside of season 29, this season starts the trend of celebrities taking priority over regular everyday folk for a little bit. The Amazing Race 28 scores a 67.0. Number 23, The Amazing Race 20. Oh man, here's a season that thrives on having a mostly villainous cast, but with one exception. The cast is top heavy as well, and that's why this season falls dead center on this list in my opinion. If you like villains in a TV show, then this one is for you. If not, you might as well skip it. It's a solid season no matter what in my opinion, but the cast can easily make or break this season despite the solid route that goes to some cool and interesting locations. The Amazing Race 20 scores a 71.7. Number 22, The Amazing Race 13. I admit, the first time I saw the season, I didn't get it. Why do people like this one? I thought to myself as I watched it, but the further and further it went along, I got it. It finally clicked. Like season 26 Blind Date Edition, this season is a hot mess. Like in some ways it's normal, but then a scene happens out of nowhere that had you questioning how is this happening right now? How are these people on this show? How are they surviving the race? But also is the one time I distinctly remember teams having a moral conundrum over twists and whether to use them or not. I can see why this season doesn't make it higher, as without context, it can be baffling, and frankly, I think it actually improves on a rewatch. The Amazing Race 13 scores a 72.3. Number 21, The Amazing Race 2. This season is criminally underrated. In fact, it dropped this year. Why? Well, probably because of the story. On a first time watch, I get why season 2 is only number 21. They're still working out the kinks in the format. The cast is a step down from season 1, but the season still has a massive budget, and a lot of the route is them hanging out in Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. I find that this is a season that improves on a rewatch when you know where it's going. So many seasons are only good the first time through, this one's better. It is still solid with one of the best storylines and finishes to any season of the show, and while I can't spoil, I want you to know that you will not finish the season unsatisfied. In fact, you will be awed and wish there was a reunion episode to just soak it in more, but unfortunately, there is not. The Amazing Race 2 scores a 74.8. Number 20, The Amazing Race 15. How memorable is the cast of season 15? I flippin' remember to this day who finished in 9th. I can't say that about almost any other season, but the cast here is so good, I almost remember them all. This season also features one of the most iconic moments in the show's history, and no amount of me saying that's gonna spoil it. You'll be surprised when it happens. You'll smack your forehead from the stupidity and then proceed to have a headache for the rest of the day. They even visit 2 new countries this season, in Estonia and the Czech Republic, but a leg one twist will have you say why. Why did they do that? This is a solid season from start to finish, and it would rank higher if it were up to me. The Amazing Race 15 scores a 75.0. Number 19, The Amazing Race 1. In the beginning, there was season 1 of the show. Kind of like Survivor, the basics of the show were there. 11 teams of 2 racing around the world for $1 million. While there are so many cool locations and a great cast and a lot of traveling, there are 2 major flaws. One is that the tasks they typically have to do are far too easy, and the second is that the pacing of many episodes can feel very slow. They fix most of these issues with season 2, but season 1 has good bones with none of the kinks worked out. If you can accept a season that feels a bit slow but is still a satisfying watch, then start here at the beginning. The Amazing Race 1 scores a 76.9. Number 18, The Amazing Race 19. I must admit, I only watched this season because Ethan and Jenna from Survivor were in it, but by the time it finished, I was blown away. At times it seemed like the season might end predictably. I won't say how or why, but it does not go predictably at all. From episode 1, they added a new twist where no one's eliminated in episode 1, but instead 2 teams are eliminated in leg 2, which might have you on the edge of your seat as it did for me. Oh, and they also introduced the hazard twist, 4 new countries to the show, and they have a crazy final 2 episodes. It's great. Watch it. It starts strong and it ends strong. The Amazing Race 19 scores a 79.4. Number 17, The Amazing Race 35. The Amazing Race 35 was actually meant to be season 36. Yeah, they swapped, but was later retooled to air earlier due to it being the first season with longer episodes and the whole writer strike thing was happening. And wow, that combined with them being done with COVID restrictions felt like a breath of fresh air. Finally, The Amazing Race could go back to doing what it did best before COVID and wash out the taste of season 32 being the last quote-unquote normal season of the show. Ugh. The use of no non-elimination legs makes every episode a thriller, knowing that no one is safe. The Express Pass and the U-Turn are thankfully back after a long time away, and The Amazing Race 35 visits a new location. All in all, a solid season of the show that scores a 79.5. Number 16, The Amazing Race 23. The Afghanimals. Sorry, but kind of like the Cowboys, the Afghanimals bring the heat, and if you like them, then every season they are in is instantly better. The cast here is solid, and it has to be since The Amazing Race doesn't visit any new locations this season. And this is only season 23, there's still so many locations they could go to if they wanted to. So thankfully, unlike some other seasons on this list, the race to who wins comes down to more than just a few teams, as first place finishes are all over the place and predictability is kind of out the window. I like that, and so do the fans, which is why The Amazing Race 23 scores an 80.4. Number 15, The Amazing Race 22. The Amazing Race 22 isn't bad, it just lacks surprises. Almost every location they go to in this one has been visited before by them, and there's nothing new in terms of twists. Clearly though, in my opinion, people must have rewatched this season since last year as it made a massive jump up in the rankings. This one is a lot like pizza. It ain't the best food you can eat, but it is comforting and an easy season to binge start to finish. The Amazing Race 22 scores an 82.1. Number 14, The Amazing Race 14. Some seasons start a little slow. Not this one. It will hit you like a block of cheese to the face. Hard. This is one of those seasons that had a route that inspired me to visit the locations, and the cast are so memorable, they brought back a lot of them for a later returning season that is higher up on this list. Heck, you might recognize Mike White from School of Rock, White Lotus, or Survivor. My biggest drawback of this season is the lack of new countries outside of Romania, but otherwise the tasks more than make up for the lack of newness. This is a great season to watch back to back with season 18, as that season almost feels like a sequel to this one in many ways. Don't miss out on what is widely considered a beloved season of the franchise. The Amazing Race 14 scores an 83.5. Number 13, The Amazing Race 11, All-Stars. Remember earlier when All-Stars 2 fell almost to the bottom of this list? Well, All-Stars 1 is what 2 should have been. The show's host had been reluctant to do it, especially after Survivor did their first one and it massively misfired, but it has a solid returning cast, a fire first 2/3 of the season in my opinion, a route that includes 5 new countries and 13 legs, which no season has topped since as of the time of this video. The downside is that the cast is not bigger than normal, so there are more non-elimination legs, which kills the last third of the season for me. But after watching seasons 1 through 10, you might as well watch this one. It's a follow-up to all of them. Even though one of the teams on the season lied about dating when the show filmed, just so they could still be in it. I'm looking at you, Eric and Danielle. The Amazing Race 11 scores an 83.6, and now for the part of the list that I call Love at First Watch. Number 12, The Amazing Race 10. Ready for a record that this season holds that no others can touch? Season 10 visits the most countries with 13. Yeah, and only 12 legs, and 6 of those are brand new to the show this time around. Wow, what a route. They also introduced a new twist where if you finish last and aren't eliminated, you are marked for elimination. I won't spoil it, but it's a game changer. The casting also took a step up here by including 1 Muslim and 2 Asian American teams for the first time. Yeah, it took them this long. Overall, this is a good season, and that is why The Amazing Race 10 scores an 85.0. Number 11, The Amazing Race 29, Strangers Edition. For 28 seasons, The Amazing Race ran with the idea of people with pre-existing relationships being on teams, traveling the world, completing fun and daring challenges, and all the drama that is caused between people that already know each other. Season 29 takes that and just chucks it out the window completely, and unlike its predecessor with the Blind Date Edition, Season 29 fully commits to this idea of everyone not knowing each other and they get to pick their own partner. This concept panned out beautifully and it should be done again. It just worked out that well. One very iconic team will steal your heart, and overall the show almost does no wrong here. It's just outdone by better seasons. I would not watch this as your first season because it will set expectations in the wrong way, but maybe as your third or fourth, it's really good. The Amazing Race 29 scores an 85.1. Number 10, The Amazing Race 3. While most fans, not including myself, thought Season 2 was a step down from Season 1, Season 3 picks it right back up. In fact, I noticed the odd-numbered seasons in the classic era seem to outperform the even-numbered seasons. This season boasts all new countries for the show not visited by the last two seasons, and has quite a few memorable teams. One team I am 99% sure is only carried by one person, and you'll know them when you see them. It's almost impossible not to notice. Without spoiling anything, this season features many memorable moments and is an overall good time. The Amazing Race 3 scores an 89.3. Number 9, The Amazing Race 12, the game-ending U-turn. Out of all the twists introduced in the show's history, this one is the most devastating and yet kind of the most fun for us at home. It brings an element to the game that has teams clenching their butt cheeks. Here we see the debut of it and how it becomes a massive moral conundrum for so many teams that persist through at least seasons 13 and 14, where teams just don't feel right about using something so devastating on other teams. Yeah, I love it. It says a lot that a season this good is only number 9. The Amazing Race 12 scores a 90.5. Number 8, The Amazing Race 9. As Chris Collinsworth would say, now here's a guy. I mean, here's a season that people watch, like, and later forget why. They visit 3 new countries for the show, actually have the race end at the same spot it started, which sounds like they do it all the time, but they don't. And while it feels like a 2-horse race at times, the underdogs show that they aren't here to be messed around with. I personally like the route they choose, and all in all, while season 9 is rarely someone's favorite, no one actively has anything bad to say about it. It's just good. The Amazing Race 9 scores a 91.8. Number 7, The Amazing Race 17. So in every season I've talked about so far, I've made sure to only show footage from episode 1. I am still doing that here, but it says a lot that a massive iconic moment for the show happens in episode 1, and I am actively avoiding spoiling it at all. I think my only gripe with season 17 is that it isn't in high definition. This is remedied the very next season, but here, I wish they had done it. They do visit a few new countries, introduce a new twist that is well balanced, and in a weird twist, there are no married teams. Imagine that. The Amazing Race 17 is a top tier season that is can't miss TV, and it scores a 93.7. Number 6, The Amazing Race 21, top 3 season. Oh wait, I know you heard me say it was number 6, but for me, this is a top 3 season. Remember the U-turn I talked about a little while ago? Well, this season introduces a team so devious that they go full villain and use the U-turn in a way no one had even considered doing before. It is mind-blowing how they do it. This season also introduced the twist of $2 million being up for grabs instead of the standard $1 million, putting a massive target on one team's back, and the show upgrades the U-turns to now be blind, which all things considered, these twists are all in favor of villainous gameplay that is a whole lot of fun to watch. For Survivor fans, this is the introduction of Natalie and Nadia. Yeah, they appeared here before Survivor, and the cast this season is a lot of fun. The Amazing Race 21 scores a 95.5. Number 5, The Amazing Race 25. Oh my gosh, I want to talk about how the season plays out, but I can't. Just know that the storyline of good guys versus mean guys is a sight to behold. Unfortunately, Keith and Whitney from Survivor are here. They sucked on that show and they suck here. They're not the reason this season is even high up. There are a few new countries introduced this season, including one that I now have to put on my bucket list to visit that I didn't even know existed. And the final leg twist was a stroke of genius on the show's part that they need to try in more seasons. It makes for a tense race with cool locations and a fun cast to boot. The Amazing Race 25 scores a 96.5. We now move on to the cream of the crop, aka the best seasons. Number 4, The Amazing Race 18 Unfinished Business. Heads up, seeing part of this video will spoil you on teams that do not win their first season. Click ahead to number 4 if you care. I just want to let you know because I don't want to spoil you. All right, here we go. Obviously, this season is awesome. That's all you need to know. It's the Survivor Cambodia second chances of The Amazing Race, but The Amazing Race did it first. Remember All-Stars 1 and 2? This took place between both of them and it's vastly superior. Despite being a little season 14 heavy, the cast is top notch of teams that didn't win their first time out. It features the first use of a cliffhanger and the no rest leg twist that I explained earlier. Also, they finally make the jump to high definition, and what a world of difference this is when seeing the fantastic places they visit. The route is great, hitting every major country they could in the episodes allotted, and if you watched seasons 12 through 17, you gotta watch this one. It's like the cap to those seasons. The Amazing Race 18 scores a 107.2. Number 3, The Amazing Race 7. Do you know Boston Rob and Amber from Survivor? Love them, hate them, don't know them, you sure will have a strong opinion about them after watching this one. But unlike season 16 where the show was ride or die on you liking one team, the Cowboys, Rob and Amber are just one of the big names amongst a cast of great characters who create memorable moments and literally will have you on the edge of your seat as they race to the finish. Just thinking about it again, I say this every year, but again, it gave me goosebumps just saying that. However, Rob and Amber play a game so devious, the race made quite a few rule changes to close their loopholes they revealed in this show. Yeah, it's a wild ride start to finish, and personally, my favorite season of all time. The Amazing Race 7 scores a 115.5. Number 2, The Amazing Race 31, Survivor vs. Big Brother vs. The Amazing Race. What happens when The Amazing Race clashes with some of Survivor and Big Brother's biggest names? A season that absolutely kills it from episode 1. There are some returnees on the season from The Amazing Race, and there's also players from those other 2 shows I mentioned. Obviously, I wouldn't watch this one first. I would watch at least seasons 5 and 29 before. But even if you do watch this one, it's stellar. It just holds more weight after seasons 5 and 29. Seriously, I can't find fault with this one. It's fun, has great music outside of the theme song. I still cannot get 7 Nation Army out of my head, and the cast brings it every episode. There is good gameplay, dumb gameplay, and fun character moments. If I had to fault it, I will say that they don't have the budget you would hope for this season, for this kind of cast. Yeah, I wish they had more money, but they did the best with what they had, and it stands the test of time. Top notch. The Amazing Race 31 scores a 117.5. Number 1, The Amazing Race 5. The King stays on top. This season has the longest route in Amazing Race history. When the show has a great cast and a big budget, it fires on all cylinders. They almost got canceled after season 4. In season 5, they went all out to save the show, and it worked. They visit every inhabitable continent, visit 9 new countries for the show, a new twist is added for the first time, and finally a penalty is given to teams who finish in last on non-elimination legs. It's about time. This is number 1 on the list, and it has an all-newbie cast. Start here. This is a great season. I'm not saying anything more. Watch this season and then season 7 and you'll be hooked. The Amazing Race 5 scores a 122.5. Well, that's the video. Do you agree with these rankings? Did the fans get it right or wrong? Anyways, thanks for watching, and doubly thanks for liking and subscribing. I'll see you all next time.